Very good morning, afternoon or evening, depending where you are located in. We've got people joining us today on this second HUMIPAK webinar for the week from all parts of the world again. So it's very late for the Asians and very early morning for the Americans. My name is Jouni Vikman. I'm head of sales and marketing at Westfield Medical. Before we crack on, I'll just tell you about few practicalities. First of all, we are recording this session, and the link of the recording will be shared with all of you on different platforms, but also by email. During this 1 hour session, you guys have a possibility to send us questions using the questions and answers function, which you can find on your screen. Feel free to send those questions at all time during the presentations. In the end of the session, we will go through all of them or part of them, depending how much time we have left. If we don't have enough time to cover them all, we will then send our answers later on by email. Agenda for today is as follows. I will start with some basics about HUMIPAK, what it is, how it is to be used, and what are the benefits for end users using it. Westfield Medical's technical director, Mr. Jim Baldwin, is going to talk about more technical things related to HUMIPAK and taking us deeper on the physics and mechanics of HUMIPAK and its functionalities. Last but not least, we have a guest speaker talking about the implementation and usage of HUMIPAK. And actually, it says on the screen from Jordan Hospital, this was on our Tuesday's session, but today we have Mark Vijver from Holland. Total duration for the session will be 1 hour. I'll start with a short video clip. So we of course hope that after this session today you will feel like Michael on the clip, or even if something close, we'll be very happy. What is HUMIPAK? HUMIPAK is a moisture retention pouch which is designed to inhibit hydrophobic proteins adhering to post-operative surgical instruments, and doing that by creating a moist environment. The original idea came from CSSD technicians already some years ago, who came to us saying that time to time they find it very difficult to wash off any proteins, blood, and other soil off from the post-operative instruments. We were thinking about the problem, and I think at some point people involved on the process, they were thinking about dishes. If we do the dishes straight away after we've eaten, we all know how easy it is to remove the organic soil. But if we let the dishes sit, let's say next day, we all know also how difficult the soil is to be removed. And this gave us the idea of creating a moist environment and keeping then all the soil in soft state, and thus easier to be removed. HUMIPAK is also creating a containment for soiled instruments, facilitating safe transportation from operating room to CSSD. This is a particularly important benefit in certain countries, and for example, we have heard from the US that this is quite often the reason for using HUMIPAK. Why to use HUMIPAK? Several studies show that drying of the proteins, organic soil, starts already within 15 minutes after the surgical procedures. And once the protein has dried onto the instruments, it is very difficult to be cleaned. So the applications where the use of HUMIPAK has proven to be very applicable are, for example, off-site operating theaters, which do not have CSSDs in the same unit, but the used trays and endoscopes need to be transported somewhere off-site, and this, of course, taking much longer time than 15 minutes or 30 minutes, quite often hours. A lot of operations are done in, especially in some smaller units during nighttime and weekends when the CSSDs are not operational. HUMIPAK is very a good solution for these units. There are always rush hours when there are delays and the surgical instruments trays will be sitting longer than 30 minutes before they get reprocessed. In quite many countries, 30 minutes is kept as a guideline that if surgical instrument need to sit for 30 minutes or longer before they get reprocessed, they should be kept in moist conditions. Therefore, any time there are some delays expected more than 30 minutes, use of HUMIPAK may be a good idea. How to use HUMIPAK? After the instrument set in an OR has been used, one needs to select a correct size of HUMIPAK and then measure a specified amount of water. Quite often people are using syringes just simply because they are handy, and but one can use also other types of measurement classes for administering administering the specified amount of water. Water is to be put inside the HUMIPAK onto the blue substrate, which is embedded 2 film layers. This blue substrate is highly absorbent material, which can absorb 7 times of water of its own weight, and it spreads around this water inside the HUMIPAK, creating a very wide surface area and thus facilitating very quick wicking. After the water has been put in, then the instrument set is placed inside HUMIPAK. And then the HUMIPAK is closed using self-seal tape, which is adhered onto the HUMIPAK. Once the seal is closed, the relative humidity inside the pouch will start increasing rapidly and creating that moist atmosphere, keeping all organic soil in soft state. After the closing, the HUMIPAK and tray inside is then sent back to CSSD for reprocessing. And in the CSSD, HUMIPAK is opened using, for example, scissors along the side or end furthest away from the body, and then the instrument should be processed as soon as possible. Today we have 5 different sizes on our range. The smallest one, 200 times 350, is designed for individual instruments and also for some small size trays. Then we have 3 different sizes, all specified for certain commonly used tray sizes, half-DIN, full-DIN and double-DIN. Newest addition on our size range is the size specifically designed for endoscopes, which are kept on plastic baskets. What are the benefits of using HUMIPAK? First of all, and the main benefit is definitely a reduced risk of infections. When the organic soil is easy to be removed, the risk of poorly decontaminated instruments ending back to OR is reduced. This, of course, leading to improved patient safety. Use of HUMIPAK also reduces all risks associated with transportation of used instruments from OR back to CSSD. And when the used instruments are kept inside the HUMIPAK, contamination risk is greatly reduced. As discussed already, in many countries, it is either a mandatory requirement or at least a guideline to keep post-operative instruments in moist conditions or in moist environment. For example, in the UK, the guidance HTM 01, 0101 and 0106 specify this very precisely. The use of HUMIPAK, the process of using HUMIPAK is very easy to be validated, and therefore making the compliance easy, or to show the compliance easy. There are very clear benefits for CSSDs, as the use of HUMIPAK reduces pre-cleaning time, or it may even make it completely unnecessary. This is something that each unit needs to validate themselves. But keeping the soil in soft state and therefore reducing the need for scrubbing and brushing is reduced. Of course, this also leads to a reduction in workload for the CSSD technicians. And the same thing, this reduces the risk for rejected trays, either from the packing area, which is probably the most common, or then even sometimes from the OR. As no brushing and scrubbing is not required, the risk for damage or risk for damages for delicate instruments is reduced as well. Containment created by HUMIPAK will reduce the possibility of missing instruments. HUMIPAK is also working without any use of chemicals. Therefore, the chemical exposure to healthcare professionals is reduced, and therefore that improves health and safety. These benefits of using HUMIPAK, there are key takeaways also for hospital management and CSSD management. Obviously, the improved patient safety, most important for the patient itself, but also this is kind of image management for the whole hospital. There is a a clear cost-saving potential on using HUMIPAK, as one can replace all pre-treatment chemicals like gels and sprays. But also, as these pre-treatment chemicals, they need to be washed away before trays are placed on the washer disinfectors. And now using HUMIPAK, there is no need to do that. One can reduce the use of washing detergents. And actually that needs to be done as well. Otherwise, there would be a possibility for some excess foaming in washer disinfector. The washing is faster when HUMIPAK is used. We have done some empirical trials in some few hospitals, and taking used trays back to CSSD from the OR without using HUMIPAK and using HUMIPAK, and we could actually measure up to 70% time saving. So if the CSSD is having a bottleneck in their wash area, without any capital expenditure, capacity on this stage can be increased. The use of HUMIPAK finally improves operational efficiency through the reduced risk of cancelled and delayed operations. This was all I wanted to say to you guys today. Very basics about HUMIPAK, and now Jim will start taking us deeper onto mechanics of HUMIPAK. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Jouni. Hello. As Jouni suggested, I'm Jim Baldwin. I'm the technical director at Westfield Medical. Some of what I say you will already have heard from Jouni. Hopefully, I will be able to put a little more context to some of that. So in this presentation, we're going to look at the concept of HUMIPAK and some of the design aspects. Then we'll have a look at some third-party study that were carried out, and also a case study that we carried out in conjunction with the hospital. A little bit of insight into some of the user experience of working with HUMIPAK, but hopefully we'll gain much more of that from Mark later on. And then a little bit about handling of HUMIPAK and the benefits that it brings. So Westfield Medical have been manufacturers of sterile barrier systems for over 50 years. A lot of that involved in the development of sterilisation pouches, barrier materials and sealing technology for those. By providing products into sterile services for this length of time, we then kind of transferred some of that knowledge and understanding to help the inputs to the SSDs, and from that HUMIPAK was developed, and its purpose to make the cleaning of used instruments easier and more effective. Within the UK, there was guidance developed in the HTM series of guidelines regarding moist returns, and this really kind of helped with giving a more thorough understanding of the reasons for needing something like HUMIPAK. And the main point is to avoid any decontamination that is present on the used instruments from drying, and to make the decontamination process more effective. This work was originally prompted by issues with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and transmission through contamination on instruments. But there's also recently been more information of potentially other transmissible diseases, including potential transmission of Alzheimer's. So this is still very much a today problem, and requiring best practice. So a quick look at the design. we use only established medical grade materials for HUMIPAK, which means that we have no compatibility issues with medical devices, no materials that you wouldn't want to be taking into a hospital environment. So the outer side of the pouch, which you can see here under the bottom, is a multi-layer laminate film, normally used for sterilisation pouches. It's a very strong material, and it also has a much lower water vapour transmission rate than something like a polythene bag, for example, and the level is actually around about a third of that of a polyethylene bag. The inner layer, which you can see here, is a highly absorbent material, but more significant for the purposes of HUMIPAK is that it has the ability to wick water molecules very rapidly across the surface. And what this does is give a very high surface area of water molecules on this material, which in turn allows for a very rapid increase of humidity inside the sealed pouch as these water molecules move from the liquid phase into the vapor phase. The recommended amount of water to use with each pouch covers around about 1/4 to 1/3 of the surface area of the pouch. This allows for further absorption capacity there, so that if there are any wet residues on instruments, these can also be absorbed within this layer, and it means that there's no liquid residue there to run out when the pouch is opened. The closure, as Jouni mentioned, is a self-adhesive, self-seal enclosure. This is taken very much from our self-seal pouch technology, but allows for a very easy, continuous, airtight seal to be made. This is important because if there's an air leakage path, then there's also a moisture leakage path. The other key point with HUMIPAK is that the only thing you need to make HUMIPAK work is water. A small amount of water, and the amount is printed onto the front of each of the product sizes. So the water is added to the pouch. That then becomes a very significant amount of water vapour. That water vapour then contacts every surface of the instrument in the pack and even penetrates into the box joints and lumens. There are no surface tension limitations as there are with liquids and gels to wet out onto those surfaces. There are no pre-treatment chemicals to buy, no need to make sure that every surface of every instrument is covered with sprays or gels, and no need to wash away those pre-treatments before the instrument can be cleaned. To illustrate the effectiveness of moisture retention, we devised a test which actually used a smaller volume of water than specified for the pouches to show how effective the moisture retention is. We placed a humidity data logger inside a pouch along with a polypropylene container to create an airspace, as it would be if there were a tray or instrument set inside, but which itself doesn't contribute to the humidity levels. We then added 20 millilitres of water and sealed the pouch. We stored that for 1 week, and along with a control sample which contained no water at all. This was really just to give us a base level of the humidity that's expected just through normal temperature variation without the addition of the water into the pack. So for all of the sizes tested, and this tested the 4 original HUMIPAK sizes, the humidity reached levels above 90% within the first few hours and maintained levels over 96% for the entire 7-day period. So this really sort of demonstrates the effectiveness of both the film and the sealing strip in preventing moisture loss from the pack. We also looked at how we could verify that it's the function of the absorbent layer and the high surface area of water that improves the humidity within the pack. So we carried out another study with a saturated sponge. So this sponge contained just over 20 millilitres of water, so it was a comparable amount to the previous results that you've seen. And we then placed this into the HUMIPAK and left that for the week. And so we see here the comparative results between the sponge sample and the HUMIPAK as it's intended to be used. The sample with the sponge takes longer to build up the level of humidity. It never reaches the same level of humidity, and it also starts to degrade rapidly. From this, we deduced that some of the water that's there is actually trapped within the structure of the sponge, and so it's unable to make that transition from the liquid phase into the vapor phase in the air. For the same volume of water, same volume of air, and the same conditions, we get very different results. And this is also true with the use of towels or other things that people might want to add to try and maintain that moisture in a bag, for example. As well as the work that we've carried out in-house, there have been a number of external studies carried out. The one that I'm referencing now was an independent study that was carried out by the University of Southampton, the team there, and was published in the Journal of Bioadhesion and Biofilm Research. This looked at HUMIPAK alongside samples that were in a tied plastic bag, as some people have tried in the past, and also leaving in air. They used stainless steel tokens which were prepared and then left for a 24-hour period at constant humidity. HUMIPAK was the only environment in which the humidity was maintained, but also which resulted in reduced protein adsorption onto the surface of the instruments, or in this case the samples. And after the 24 hours of measuring, the sample in HUMIPAK was equivalent to the sample that was equivalent to the sample after 15 minutes in the plastic bag. And the report stated that HUMIPAK demonstrates a cheap, easy to implement solution to improve reprocessing and potentially reduce infections. Then have a look at a couple of studies that were carried out in the US by our partner there. And they looked at two studies to verify that HUMIPAK actually does keep contamination moist. The first of these used a number of instruments, including some difficult to clean features, and was stored for 5 days. The overriding result there was that after 5 days, the samples that were in HUMIPAK remained moist, whilst the others dried out very rapidly within the first couple of hours. They then had a look at the effectiveness with cannulated devices. On this one, they looked at it for up to 3 days. Soils were enclosed in a lumen. These took longer to dry out, but in general, if you do get soils drying out inside a lumen, they're much more difficult to remove. And again, on this, the samples in HUMIPAK maintained the moisture levels in the soil, whereas the control samples didn't. Although the primary purpose of HUMIPAK is infection control through improved decontamination, we can't ignore the costs associated with using the product. So we carried out a study in conjunction with a UK sterile services department where HUMIPAK is used, particularly for caesarean section sets. The feeling from the unit was that HUMIPAK saved them time when they were used for these heavily soiled sets. So we looked to verify this by carrying out back-to-back studies with and without HUMIPAK. With HUMIPAK, the sets took around 3 minutes to clean, so here, compared with 14.5 minutes without HUMIPAK. So I'm sure you'll agree this is a significant difference. The data for England and Wales for 2019 shows there are just over 53,000 births per month. And the data also shows that 29% of these were caesarean deliveries. So across England and Wales alone, if you take a slightly more conservative time saving of 10 minutes a set, that gives potentially a saving of 2,500 hours per month of time spent cleaning these sets. So the impact on staffing in SSDs, allowing potentially redeployment to other tasks, reduction in the need for overtime, increased flexibility, are all real benefits that our users find. In addition to the improved cleaning of instruments, the other key benefit, as Jouni mentioned, is containment and the ability to isolate any potential biohazard material within a sealed environment. This means that any contamination that's on the instruments inside the pack stays inside the pack. There's no risk of spreading or dispersing infectious materials during the movement of the used instruments, whether this is within the hospital itself or between units to an off-site reprocessing unit, the vehicles that may involve numbers of pairs of hands going through that. So looking at potentially infectious materials, one question that has been raised regarding HUMIPAK is that of bacterial growth. An enclosed humid environment is clearly conducive to bacterial growth, so we wanted to try and understand what that really means. So we carried out a study at a UK test house looking at instruments contaminated with 4 different species of organism. Samples were prepared and placed in the HUMIPAK as recommended and stored at room temperature. So what did this show us? Well, a bit of a mixed picture really, and quite inconclusive. There are no clear patterns across the test species or HUMIPAK size. Some show some evidence of delayed growth, others show some growth followed by decay, but overall it's very unclear. So if it's unclear under laboratory conditions, then in practice, then it's really difficult to predict what is going to happen, as there are so many factors and variables that can affect it. The environment, the temperature, the contents of the pack, what type of set it is, what type of instruments, food sources, how much residue is there, that's going to vary between types of procedure, even the patient, and the initial level and initial type of bacteria is a bit of an unknown. But as I say, it's contained within the HUMIPAK. The other point to note really is that other alternative options such as sprays and gels are designed to keep instruments moist, but they don't kill bacteria either. Even enzymatic sprays, they will start to break down the proteins, but the bacteria are still there. It's not a different product with HUMIPAK. So, yes, we recognise that there's potential bacterial growth, but it's contained. And we believe that on a risk basis, it's better to ensure containment of infectious material than it is to potentially disperse bacteria through the transit route. The pack is then only opened once it's in the controlled environment of the decontamination area. There are some key points to consider. We would always recommend reprocessing the contents of the pack as soon as possible. As soon as possible in some departments might be the Monday after the instruments have been used on a Friday over a weekend. But we would never advocate keeping instruments in HUMIPAK longer than you need to. Then with PPE, there is the ability to protect the person who is opening the pack. This should be done by a risk assessment based on the arrangements in the individual unit, but may include things like masks, face shields, gowns. And we also recommend that when you're opening it, it's opened with the side or end that's furthest away from the body, and that's really just to avoid any possible plume of airborne bacteria when the pack is opened. But overall, on the risk of balance, it's potentially exposing an individual who is trained and with an appropriate level of PPE against the potential wider exposure or less effective decontamination and the associated infection risk of this. So a quick look again and recap on some of the benefits. The primary function is to prevent drying and in some areas compliance with guidelines. The specific design of HUMIPAK creates a fast humidity rise, so it starts working more quickly. The absorbency of the inner layer retains any fluids in the pack, but it also allows the water molecules to move easily into the air and become effective in keeping the contents moist. And it's easy to use, using water, not chemicals, avoiding potential compatibility issues with some instruments maybe, or possible fixative effects with some types of disinfectant. And it's an easy to form seal. It provides containment of biohazards because it's a sealed pack, so no risk of dispersion. It can be opened in a controlled way with minimum exposure. And you have the potential time saving. A potential time saving is a potential cost saving. It improves staff flexibility, it improves productivity, and it can improve your flexibility within a unit. So that concludes my part of the presentation for today. Thank you for listening and watching. I'll now hand you back to Jouni to introduce our guest speaker, Mark.
Thank you very much, Jim, for your presentation. And before I hand over to Mark, may I just remind you all that the questions and answers section is open for all of you. So feel free to send us any questions you may have during these presentations, and we will be discussing about your questions in the end of the session. If we don't have time to cover all the questions, we will then answer later on by email. And as embarrassing as it is actually that I had a wrong person on my indicated on my agenda, Tariq Mali from Jordan joined us on our Tuesday session earlier this week, and today we have another guest speaker, Mark Vijver from Medisch Centrum Leeuwarden from Holland. Mark is working there as a CSSD manager. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jouni. Nice introduction. Good pronounce of the Medical Center of Leeuwarden.
Thank you.
Very well done. Very well done. I will take you guys a little bit through my hospital and tell you why we choose for a HUMIPAK and why we did it, how we did it, and what kind of benefits it has for our hospital. I'm proud to work at a medical centrum in Leeuwarden in the Netherlands. We're located in the north of the Netherlands. We have two locations in Leeuwarden and Harlingen. We are a teaching hospital with a main regional function. So we are the main center for acute, high and complex and basic care in our region. As you see in the facts and numbers, we are quite a large hospital, and I'm going to talk specifically about the endoscopic use of the HUMIPAK, and we have about now 7,500 procedures a year, so we have to do a lot of cleaning on them. Why did we decide to go to the HUMIPAK? In 2017 we integrated the cleaning department of the flexible endoscopes into the CSSD, and we are not located on the same floor, so we have a walking distance between the two departments. Quality issues in Holland make sure we need to use the same staff in CSD as well as CSSD. For the cleaning of scopes, we only have a few of some opening hours between 7:30 in the morning and 1800 hours in the evening, and in the weekends only if it's needed. So because of the increasing numbers of flexible endoscopes during the moments we are not open, we had to look for a solution, or we had to increase staff for low production costs of low production hours, and that costs a lot of money. Or we should train the GE nurses again, but they will not be able to do it a lot because they don't work every weekend and they can't keep up with the regulations we have on cleaning on flexible endoscopes. So by some congresses, I had some introduction of HUMIPAK, and I thought, let's try it out. So what did we do? In May 2018, we started a test period in cooperation with my flexible endoscope specialist in the hospital. And we did some control sessions during opening hours and started with a 2-hour session. Everything still was good. 4-hour sessions, everything went very, very well. During a day of 8 hours, no problem we experienced. So we decided we were quite safe to try this in a real test situation after opening hours and look what it takes us. So in the start, we asked the nurses from the flexible endoscope department, give us a call when there's a flexible endoscope so we can have a look, and if it's a specific scope, which we don't have a lot of numbers of, because not everything is a simple colonoscope or a gastroscope, then we maybe have to send someone over to reprocess in another moment and ask the staff to do it quicker. But if we look in the time we started testing, we saw the staff of the cleaning department was very, very content with the new way of working. The flexible endoscopes were easy to clean still after a weekend or a day, and we still were able inside outside cleaning like we did before. So that was very, very nice. We try to register everything and document, so we still have control about which scope is done and who has cleaned it. And in 2 months, we started evaluating and checking in what does it do with maintenance. Our maintenance is always quite high on flexible endoscopes because they are very fragile. But if we look and we keep them in HUMIPAKs even over weekends, even these flexible endoscopes do not show a higher maintenance cost. So that was very encouraging for us to keep on going with the test. So actually we saw in the cleaning or in the maintenance no influence of keeping a scope in a humid surrounding. After 113 flexible endoscopes, we had a final evaluation of why did we do it, how did it work, and actually we could say we couldn't find any point that we said, okay, this might be a do not do it. It was actually all let's do it. So if I evaluate the time my scopes had been in a HUMIPAK, it was an average of 18 hours, which surprised me, but if I look at the dates, I could see a lot of times it was already placed on Friday after 6 o'clock, and we only start reprocessing them in the morning on Monday. So it was quite a long time. Since then, we still are working with the HUMIPAK,
now for, I think it's almost 2 years, more than 2 years, and still to my staff, it's very, very convenient. And if I ask my nurses of the flexible endoscope department, they are very happy as well. They don't have to do a lot of work to bring the scope to my department. They just have to add a little water on a HUMIPAK and close it and bring it to us. So that's quite encouraging for them as well. So for your information, we work with the HUMIPAK, the 650-770 size, and for scopes we have all the big brands. So we have, as well as Pentax, Olympus and Storz. So we have experience with all the flexible endoscopes. What are my benefits to use it? I don't have to reconsider to increase my staff. So after 6 o'clock, I don't need more staff. I can reprocess my scopes during the week in the next day. That's quite cost effective. I don't need in the weekends more staff for the CSSD because I can leave them there. And if there is a special scope I need to reprocess, one of my regular staff from the CSSD department can go over and do one scope. It's not a lot of work, and that's quite convenient. It saves us a lot of walking time, it saves us a lot of working time, so it's quite convenient in the weekends and also in the evening hours. In use cleaning with or without the HUMIPAK, our users do not experience difference. So if my users see no difference whether to clean the scope right after use or if it's been kept in the HUMIPAK for a couple of days, they still say the cleaning is as easy. So that's quite convenient for us as cleaning department. If we ask our GE surgeons, they do not experience negative effects on the quality of the flexible endoscopes. Why should they? Because actually we don't do anything what can damage the scope. But maybe sometimes the lenses or something like that might be damaged, but with the HUMIPAK we don't experience that. We could evaluate that because our maintenance costs didn't increase. And also, if I had damaged scopes, I can look in my system, did we have this flexible endoscope in a HUMIPAK for a long time? And that situations we didn't have, not have had after I really monitored it in the test phase. So what do? The GA nurses return the flexible endoscope and only have to do the handling of the HUMIPAK. No extra effort to reach us. We don't have to do anything more. So we have a time-effective, quality issues are ensured. We have a good solution for our department. We used this form, and it's in Dutch, but what I actually asked them, every time you use HUMIPAK, please say which nurse is here, which endoscope you used, what the time of returning it in a HUMIPAK is to the department. Then I asked them, write down the CSD employee who is reprocessing it, give me your time, your name, and your experience. I asked them for the experience of cleaning the outside, but also the inside. I was most concerned about the inside because of the length of a flexible endoscope. And actually, if you look at the brushing, the humidity made sure the brushing was as good as it was before. So even if you have the longest lumens, and as I said, we have special scopes from all the big brands, we didn't have any trouble, even not with an AS or what kind of flexible endoscope. So for us, we can say we started with the HUMIPAK. We are a good user. We are happy with it, and I see the effects and the benefits in my cost effective on my staff, but also on the time we need to go to the department to clean after opening hours, it's time efficient. So we are very happy to use it, and I think the data we collected with our maintenance and the numbers of scopes of times and our experience can say it's a very safe way to work for us. So this is what I can tell you about how we did it and why we did it. And I hope you all will join to use a HUMIPAK, because it can help you in cost-effective and staff-effective working. Back to Jouni for the Q&A.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I'm very sure that it was very insightful for many of the attendees today. They're always looking for some user experiences. Yes, as Mark was saying, now it's time for questions and answers, and we have plenty of them. So definitely our time will not be sufficient to go them through all. However, as discussed already earlier, we will be sending all these questions and all our answers to all of you, to all attendees. But let's pick the ones that we have time to answer on, and I'll do just like a random picks here, and I'll probably start with the first question. Jim, I'm very sorry already pre-hand that all these questions are more or less technical. So, so it is either you or then Mark, you may be also able to answer some of these and to give us further some user views. Mm-hmm. Tap water, sterile water, does it make a difference?
From a functionality point of view of HUMIPAK, no, it makes no difference at all. Both behaving exactly the same way. From a technical point of view, I would say that there seems very little point in using sterile water when nothing else that's going into the pouch is sterile. Mm. I think it's, we've done all of the testing, all the work with the partner hospitals during the development using tap water, and wouldn't necessarily see a need for sterile water.
Mm. Thank you. Then the next one, and Mark, you may be able to answer on this one as well, or at least comment. Has there been reluctance from OR personnel at completing an additional process, as it will be them who need to put water into the bag? In my experience, OR staff won't agree to carrying out any additional process.
I can, yes, it's something you hear a lot. I think the OR nurses are willing to do something. It's not that a lot of effort. In our hospital, I didn't have to discuss this a lot. It took about 20 seconds. It's only a little water and close the bag on the correct way and put it down. So it was no issue for us. No.
And perhaps I can also add that especially those ORs which are using pre-treatment chemicals today, like gels and sprays, that is of course something that they may be able to replace by using HUMIPAK. So it's a reduction of workload for them in that sense, or at least the workload will stay the same. Another technical question. How long can instruments stay moist in a HUMIPAK? Do you have testing on this? Perhaps Jim.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have demonstrated that a high level of humidity is maintained for 7 days. And yeah, as long as the humidity is staying at those high levels, the instruments will stay moist. However, we would not recommend leaving the instruments in there for that period of time. The purpose of that was really just to assess in a worst possible case, does the HUMIPAK maintain that level of humidity? We know we have users that are happy with the performance over a weekend or even an extended bank holiday weekend. We have data showing the performance after 5 days. Again, I think the key thing from a user perspective is keep the length of time to the minimum that you can. It's always best practice to reprocess the instruments or the scopes as soon as possible.
Mm.
Again, I would like to add something from the flexible endoscope front. We have had, in the controlled session, we had up to 65 hours with no problem at all. So even for flexible endoscopes, which are, I think, sometimes more critical even than instruments, over a weekend is no problem.
Yeah, actually, Mark, on that, I've been asked a couple of times whether there are any like issues or risks for the electronic components of scopes. What's your view on that?
We have no experience. We can say that any maintenance problems, technical, are related to a HUMIPAK. Mm. And that's why I asked them to register, and I can monitor if there are maintenance issues, if that scope has been in relation to a HUMIPAK, and is it relevant to the maintenance we experience, and that's not an issue.
Okay,
we haven't experienced.
I'll pick one again. What Mark, you may be able to comment as well. Now that we have you on the line, have you had any issues reported from sterile services about spillage of the water from the HUMIPAK when the contents are being removed?
No, my staff is always working with their protection clothes on, always with gloves and mask and face shields and a coverall. And we are used to work safe, so that's why we choose in Holland for experienced staff which can work as well at the CSD as well as the CSD, and we are used to work with all the instruments and all the flexible endoscopes which always are contaminated. So we have a lot of experience in cleaning, and we don't experience problem by opening a bag. No, just cut it open and don't do it too large.
Yeah.
But it's not that moist that you will get wet.
Yeah.
It's only moisted on the blue paper. So it's not that there is a lot of water in it.
Yeah, that's it. So, and all the water that should be inside should be adhered to the substrate. So there shouldn't be any pooling of water inside HUMIPAK.
No.
I don't know, Jim, if you have any further comments on this.
Only really to say that it's the only time I would foresee it being possible is if a large excessive amount of water has been used, or if for some reason the instruments being put in there had an awful lot of moisture content themselves. But as I said, the recommended amount of water normally covers around 1/4 to 1/3 of the capacity of the liner. So there is plenty more scope there for anything else to be absorbed within that and held within it.
Yeah. We got the same question actually on our Tuesday session. Will it be a risk for corrosion on the instruments lying in HUMIPAK for several days?
Okay, I'll probably give a similar answer to that I gave on Tuesday then. There are two examples of when we have seen that. One has been where the instruments have some pre-existing damage, where the chrome surface of the instrument has been damaged and there is some sort of rust spotting in those areas. And that often is in conjunction with an excessive amount of water. So there shouldn't be any pooling of water. You shouldn't have instruments sitting in water. We have had cases where users have put far too much water in, and you've literally had water sitting in the bottom of the pouch and on the instruments. Or in one case where the instrument set was placed in the HUMIPAK and then the water thrown in on top of it, rather than the water being put in first onto the liner and then the tray being placed on top of that. But when HUMIPAK is used in the right way and with the right amount of water, it's not something that we've seen as a recurring issue.
Yeah. Have you had, Mark, any issues?
No, but I don't expect that on the flexible endoscopes actually.
Yeah, of course.
No.
Last question. I know we have already exceeded our time, but I want to take this one. Hi, if 20 milliliter of water is sufficient, why is it recommended to add different amounts in different bag sizes?
Okay, good question. What we really wanted to demonstrate with the study that we carried out and the results that were shown is that actually you need a very small amount of water to make HUMIPAK work. We used less than the recommended level just simply to demonstrate that, but the different sizes of HUMIPAK are designed for different sizes of tray. The assumption, I guess, is the larger tray have larger instruments, more instruments in them. The quantity being packed in the HUMIPAK is an unknown to us. Therefore, we had to look at recommending a level that gave us sufficient water to get the humidity buildup, but also a small amount of excess, so that if you've got high levels of residues on the instruments, some of which may already be starting to dry by the time it goes in there, you've got that little bit of extra water to make sure that the product performs as it should.
Thank you, Jim. And our time's up. I'd really like to thank you, Mark, for being our guest speaker today. Very valuable information what you were sharing. Thank you, Jim, as well. And thank you all attendees. As discussed earlier, we will be sharing the link for the recording later on, and also we will be sending all these questions and answers, all the unanswered questions and answers as well, to you afterwards. Thank you for now, and hope to see you joining again on our next webinars. Thank you very much. Bye.